Thank you, President Frederick.
We go back and forth and back and forth. And at the end of a conversation, we're both smarter. I am here at Howard to try to get smarter, to try to be useful, to try and have healthy conversations. A long time ago, on the night before I graduated from college, I gave a speech to the graduates and their families. And I had decided to give a funny speech about the real world and poking fun at people who thought that the real world was somewhere outside of a college campus. I decided I needed to poke fun at people like my parents, who were always telling me, stop taking all these weird courses and learn something that will help you get a job. Their view was that the real world was someplace outside of a college campus. It was a scary thing to try and make a funny speech. Made all the more scary by the fact that I was following the president of the class of 1932. He had just spent 50 years in the real world, and he didn't seem very happy about his experience. He was definitely not interested in warming up the crowd for my funny speech. But I thought the speech I'd written was hilarious. I thought so, and so I pressed on. To my relief, a few people laughed. They chuckled at this silly notion that a college campus is not in the real world. I then made a strong argument that college was part of the real world, and I mocked people who said otherwise. And although I was hilarious and thoughtful, I was also mocking my parents, just as they had finished paying for and borrowing for 4 years of my education. Don't do that. Mocking your parents seems funny until you wake up one morning and you are your parents. It will happen to you. But I'm here to tell you that even all these years later, my perspective has not changed. I've lived for decades in the so-called real world, and I still think places like this are part of the real world. And I've actually come to believe that places like this are a more important part of the real world than I realized 40 years ago. This place is important because the rest of the real world is often too busy, too noisy, too dangerous for people to take the time to pause and to reflect. It's hard to find the space in the rest of the real world to question first principles. It's hard to take the time to find out how do things actually work, to actually take something apart to learn how it works. There is simply too little time taken in the rest of the real world to reflect, to think, to try to reshape the world and yourself. The rest of the real world is a place where it's hard sometimes to find people who will listen with an attitude that they might actually be convinced of something. Instead, what happens in most of the real world, and about 4 rows in this auditorium, is that people don't listen at all. They just try to figure out what rebuttal they're going to offer when you're done speaking. Sometimes they will pause briefly before telling you you're an idiot. They aren't looking to actually learn anything about you or about what you think. The rest of the real world is a place where many people just take a position instead of stating a belief and talking about it. It's a place where people take sides rather than trying to understand, are they still on the right side? They care mostly about their side winning. This little corner of the world, of the real world, Howard University, has always been different, which is why I wanted to be part of it. Howard is something of an island, there's no doubt about that. A bit removed from the craziness and the anger and the distraction of the rest of the real world. It was designed that way. And it has remained that way. And I hope it will. A safe space, especially for those who face the opportunity and the challenge of being black in America. It was designed to be. And it has remained a place where those bright young people can be tested and trained and ready to change a world that doesn't feel much like changing. On this Howard Island, there are people, and they are mostly sitting directly in front of me, who will poke you and prod you and demand that you give a hard scrubbing to your assumptions, your predispositions, your biases. It's a place where these people will insist that you actually listen and understand those with whom you're speaking. It's a place where you can come to meet and come to really know, if you'd like, people who are very different than you, people who are incredibly interesting, some fascinating, some actually a little weird, if you're honest. It's a place where a science geek can study philosophy or Islam or music. And it's a place where a philosopher can learn about neuroscience and what that discipline tells us about who we are and what we can be. It's a place where people have long taken the time and the space to think about our government, our institutions, our natures, and about ways to make all of those things better. Wherever you come from, you can use your time on Howard Island wisely. You can use that time to learn, to think, to question things around you. You can use that time to argue. You can use that time to dream. You can use that time to complain. In other words, you can use your time at Howard University on this island to train yourself to become a well-rounded citizen of the world. But you don't have to. You can use your time on this island just as a bridge between high school and a career. Your main interest can be socializing while trying to train yourself to get a good job. You can get good grades. You can suffer through the courses that they force you to take. And you can focus on your specialty, whatever that is. Now, some fine people do that, but I think it would be a mistake. And I'm very glad that Howard University makes it very hard to follow that path. Now, I should add, I'm not against socializing. College is the perfect place to find love and then trick that person into thinking you're the best they're ever going to find. It worked for me, it can work for you too. But life on Howard Island can be so much more than that. Howard's role in this nation's history is unique because it consistently turns out people who have used their time here to challenge themselves and to broaden themselves. It turns out people who want to keep learning. It turns out people want to keep challenging, who want to keep contributing. And we need people like that very badly in this country and this world right now. There's a lot of pain and hurt in this country and this world, and to the graduates, it's going to be there when you graduate from Howard University. Our country is going through one of those periods where we're trying to figure out, so who are we really and what do we stand for? It's painful and it's hard and sometimes it's a little bit scary. But if you think back over Howard's 150 years, you will find reason to be optimistic. Howard reminds us that we have been through very tough times and always emerged better and stronger.
Howard reminds us that every single person can make a contribution and a difference. That kind of person has always come from here. Be that kind of person. Which leads me to the last thing I want to tell you. You have now joined, first-year students, a very special family. Of course, it's a family of amazing academic talent. You are sitting among some of the brightest and most creative young people imaginable. Whatever your path was to this point, I'm confident it'll be marked from here by excellence and achievement. That's a natural. But more than that today, you add your light to the beacon that has always lit the way, not just for a race, but for a nation. And this isn't about people in long-ago photographs. You can look to any corner of American life and see Howard and what it produces for this country and this world. The Howard family is everywhere. They're in visible roles, leading institutions, dominating in the arts and entertainment and professions, but they're also in countless less visible roles. They're out there every day, touching and healing and inventing and helping. Your membership in this family will change your life. But the nature of this family is a gift purchased for you by people who went before you and bought something for you that is beyond price. As a member of the family that has long guided the life of this nation, you have obligations to which you must be faithful. Your first obligation is to never, ever fail to help those who follow you. The fellow members of your family who will follow you need you to look out for them, to mentor them, to guide them, to hire them, to help them succeed just as you will succeed. Those ahead of you are going to do the same for you. That's an obligation that lasts a lifetime. The second obligation is a solemn duty to give back some of what you have gotten by virtue of your remarkable family that you are part of. Contributing your time, your talent, even your money is part of an honor-bound obligation to this family, as important to this university as any code. Those who follow you will depend upon you. Never forget that. The long line of builders and doers that started 150 years ago now extends down and includes you. By joining that line, you have made it better. Welcome to Howard. I'm honored to be here with you, and I look forward to adult conversations about what is right and what is true. Thank you.